Okay, did the woman speak and say?
Yeah.
Being recorded, you are being recorded. But welcome everyone to a very special Alta Mesa Center for the Arts reading series featuring one of the co-founders, Elizabeth Robinson, who also is a dear friend to many of us and a pastor to many of us and a poet to many of us. So she wears many, many hats. And since we started scheming about the Alta Mesa Center for the Arts about this time last year for a May event, it's been a great pleasure to kind of collaborate and to build this mission that has become, the dream has become real over the course of the year. So I'm going to give a little bit of an introduction to the Alta Mesa Center, a little bit of a bio to Elizabeth Robinson. She's going to introduce our special guest, Jennifer Leibovich, and then Jennifer will speak, Elizabeth will read, and then you have time for questions. So please feel free to chat in the chat box. I'll keep my eye on that. But then after everyone's done speaking, we'll have plenty of time for questions. Please, if you feel so inclined, donate to Feet Forward. It's for people who are experiencing homelessness and by people who have at one time or another experienced being unhoused. So Alta Mesa Center for the Arts is an interfaith arts and spirituality hub housed within and sponsored by Orinda Community Church. We believe that art is a spiritual act and a human right. We wish to provide a place, even a virtual space, where people from diverse traditions, artistic practices, and economic realities come together in community. We know that art can bridge the divisions, substantive and arbitrary, that divide us. We come together not only to practice and to teach the arts, but to celebrate and learn from our differences and to foster lively and respectful interdisciplinary dialogues. We seek unity in diversity. Whoever you are on your artistic and spiritual journey, whoever you are welcome to this space. It is, again, my pleasure to introduce Elizabeth Robinson. And while I do have a script and while you will have access to this complete bio, I'm going to go off script a little bit and just say that over the course of the year that we've been able to know her as a church community, the blessing of having a poet as a pastor is going to be evident to all. There's a sense of purpose that goes beyond the words themselves. A lot of writers speak about social justice, but over the course of her career, Elizabeth Robinson has lived those words, which has become evident, I think, if you know her, even for 5 minutes. She has numerous publications, including 16 books, some of which I have on my shelf and some of which are on my desk right here. She's the pastor of Orinda Community Church. Raise your hand virtually or otherwise if you're here from the Orinda Community Church. Should we give a shout out? She's also worked in Denver with people experiencing homelessness, or in Boulder, Colorado. She was the minister and poet in residence in the United Church of Christ in Boulder. She says one of the greatest joys of her life are her sons, and that's evident if you know her, and her husband, Randy Prunty, who writes poetry. She works in community and shares God's kindness, and it's a great pleasure to step back and hold out for you, Elizabeth Robinson, for this whole hour with Jennifer Leibovich, who's you're going to love equally. So thank you, Elizabeth, for coming. And yeah, I'll step back. And
thank you, Mary. Thanks for being my co-conspirator on this whole project. And I'm really, really grateful to have Jen here, who, I don't know, I think I've said this to you, Jen, but I consider you my sister from another mother. So here's some of Jennifer's own words. After saving my foot from frostbite and climbing my way out of homelessness, I decided to make homelessness my business. So I enrolled in Colorado State University's undergraduate human services program. I started collecting and distributing socks under Save a Toe's initiative to Boulder's unhoused in October 2018. With increased support and a lack of welcoming spaces for the value of lived experience, I structured Feet Forward, her nonprofit, which she created basically out of thin air, in August 2020 to give back and create a healthy space for myself and others as they climb out of homelessness. I'm a senior now and will graduate in July of 2022 and have my eyes set on MPA, Master's in Public Administration. Is that right? And she ends with, here's to those who don't give up, to the underdogs and to those who think outside the box. The world needs you. And Jennifer herself is evidence of that need. And so, Jennifer, I thought it would be interesting to hear you talk a little bit about your own journey, but how you got the idea to start a nonprofit, and to clarify, for people who don't know that much about services for the unhoused, why Feet Forward is so innovative and distinct.
Hey, first and foremost, I would really like to thank everybody for joining this session. And this strikes me like personally, emotionally, because Elizabeth Robinson has been so, she played such a critical role in my life. So, excuse me if I get a little emotional, but they say that helping girls get into these roles because they are compelled to do so because they want to impact even just one life. And Elizabeth Robinson, I cannot tell you all the ways that she impacted my life. So for that, I am like, I can't even extend my like proper gratitude. So moving forward with how I structured Feet Forward was, I was homeless in Boulder for almost 5 years. My pathway to homelessness was domestic violence. I had fled my ex-husband like 3 or 4 times in the state of Indiana. I came to Colorado, basically seeking refuge. And I ended up homeless for 4.5 years. And Elizabeth would call me service resistant. The system would call me service resistant. I know that term now because I attend, Colorado State University, and also I run a nonprofit. But what propelled me to start this nonprofit is that Elizabeth Robinson, prior to her position with what she's doing today, in Boulder, she was a court navigator. She was the first person to take this seat as a court navigator at the municipal court system, which I had an extensive history with. And that's how we met. And she referred me to a program. And so I went to this program for roughly 18 months. And I graduated the program. And I moved back and I started, to collect socks because I had frostbite myself. And there's such a need for like these basic essentials that like, I don't really think that people that are not experiencing homelessness understand like how dire the situation is. And so just a simple thing like socks, it's so important. And so I started collecting socks, and then under an initiative called Save a Toe in 2018. And then it started to expand, and I was so eager to contribute. I was wanting to help people. I was wanting to make my community better. I was in this space, like this unique space. I had this like what I consider to be, for lack of better words, I considered it to be like just this unique voice. And I just wanted help. And I found like nobody wanted me to help. so I didn't let that deter me. And so what I ended up doing was structuring a nonprofit and creating space for myself. And by doing that, I created a space for others that maybe looked at with stigma or what have you. And we've been really providing these incredible services since since 2018, but I mean, as a nonprofit since 2020. And I mean, there's no other word for it, but like, really, it's magical.
So now city council members are asking Jen for endorsements. She's collaborating with service agencies across Boulder, and a lot of her, she has a board, a lot of her volunteers are people with lived experience of homelessness. So they have an inside knowledge that makes them more sensitive and informed respondents to people who are living outside. So it's a not easy. I think I know from recent emails from you it's not easy, but I think it's also transforming Boulder.
I mean, I don't want to tie up this this space with how much resistance I've had, particularly in Boulder. It's, I know pretty much everybody in the Zoom is probably in California, but homelessness affects everybody. And this is a global problem. It's a global issue, and California has one of the highest homelessness rates in the nation. I mean, I believe it follows New York City per capita. And so whether I'm there or whether I'm here, the fact remains is that the stigma follows people. And as a woman, and a woman that was homeless, I'm in a pretty unwelcoming space in Boulder. And I've been having to navigate some pretty challenging situations in the last 2 days. And I'm going to persist. The reality is that I have 100 to 200 people outside that rely on me each and every week. They trust me and to do the right thing and to be in the best interest of their best interest. And I will, that is what drives me. And I think that it doesn't matter that if I'm in Boulder or not. This is absolutely applicable to California, wherever you are, because the thing is that the unhoused community, I mean, there are so many pathways that lead a person to homelessness. I'm in Boulder right now. We just had the worst wildfires in history in the state of Colorado. Okay, and so I watched as this community rallied around all the people that whose houses were burned, and that's like so unfortunate. And dozens of like pop-up shops and all of these like community members rallying around, stepping up. And there seems to be a distinction between homelessness. It's like, and the reality is it's all homelessness. It doesn't matter if your home like, burns down from a fire, or if you happen to like, sleep in a tent, in a tent in a park. Everybody's homeless. It's the same thing. And it just struck me as like super interesting to watch this, because as a person that I host an event every week, and I'd really like to tell everybody about that. I don't know if people want to hear about that, but I host an event every week in a very public centralized park, and in a city that is not really friendly to the homeless. In fact, they do a lot of exclusive type of policies to exclude the homeless. And so I'm not necessarily the most welcome. And I host this event every week. And as Elizabeth, said that I used to be homeless here. So some of the people that attend, I used to sleep under bridges with. I used to be arrested with because they enforce criminalization. And I have an extensive history here. I'm invested in this community. And so at any rate, I host this event. It draws all these people, and I provide them a hot meal, not just any hot meal. This is something I'd like would like to talk about is I feel that there is this distinction between food that's good enough for certain types of people and food that's good enough for other types of people. And so I work to diminish that. And so I provide meals at my events that you would order at your house. And I feel that's really important because as a person that used to be homeless, living in a community where there's very little welcoming spaces, I just feel that I just feel that's really important to create a welcoming space, to treat people, even if they are not viewed, by the rest of like my community, to view them as valuable and to give them choices. So the thing that I do is I provide meals. I partner with local restaurants. I also partner with faith-based communities in the area. And then I bring a bunch of really great things to the table, and things that they've never been offered before, and treating them just like human beings, because they really, at the end of the day, they're human beings. And I feel like the system just doesn't treat people that are experiencing homelessness like they're humans. So, or maybe I should say they treat them like they're subhumans. So I strive every week that I'm in the park hosting my event to bring things to the table that I know have never been offered in my community. And I wish you weren't in California so you could come see it, because it's it's so beautiful. And I never can put on this event without a bare minimum of 18 volunteers. And it's so diverse, and it's this beautiful melting pot of people that want to contribute and give back. And I wish I could host you all.
That was what struck me, I think, too, when we were talking earlier about how you are able to create community out of nothing. And that talent, that ability to do that again and again was just such an inspiration, to do that in the most dire of circumstances. Even though we're states away, I'm grateful for that model that you've given us.
Well, and the thing is so if people, all right, I'm just going to be very frank with everybody. Homelessness is a global issue, and homelessness is absolutely a rising issue. I'm pretty place-based to Boulder, but I also pay attention to California, because California has the second highest homeless population per capita compared to New York. So I pay attention to what California is doing in terms of how they're responding to this, what kinds of programs they're doing, how the government is reacting, because these are things that are I live in a community, Boulder, that likes to wait and watch. They like to wait for about 10 years, for other communities to test out programs. And then they bring them in, after about 10 years, and then they say they're innovative. And so it's important for me to pay attention to what's going on, because homelessness is a global thing. This is not just a place based in Boulder. And I I just feel like, I mean, I could easily like exchange cities. I could be in Boulder and hosting these events, and supporting other people's climbs out of homelessness right there in California, and it would be like is equally effective, because this model, what I'm doing, is absolutely never been done before. And I'm not a person that likes to toot my own horn. I am not. I'm not. I've had I've had like articles written about me and all this. It makes me feel uncomfortable, and this kind of makes me feel uncomfortable. Um, but what I gravitate towards is that I'm a student. I attend Colorado State University. Obviously, I'm a pretty non-traditional student. I'm on the cusp of graduating my undergraduate human services, and all of my studies, when possible, are driven by my experience in homelessness. So, so I feel comfortable like telling everybody in this group right now that statistically, I'm a unicorn. Like I am a unicorn. Like I, I don't like to say that like about myself personally, statistically. And so, I know Elizabeth like smiled at that, but I I just want you to be, I just want to convey that there's so much stigma around homelessness, and everybody, claims that they want to end homelessness, and the only way to end homelessness is to house people. And I got housed, and I wanted to give back to my community, and there was no space for me. And so I've created a space for myself and others. And that is so important, because when you are experiencing homelessness and you transition from outside to inside, it is like it's another environment, and you are losing your social connections. And sometimes like it is familial. Like you will develop these relationships with people outside, because you're going through these unique experiences. I can't even like begin to describe, but I mean, you're surviving and things I don't even want to talk about. And so you may view somebody as like your uncle and your aunt, and then you move into an apartment and you have this entire space, and the first thing you're inclined to do is think about the people that you're leaving outside. So then you invite them in. And so what I am providing is a space, a healthy space, for people to still remain connected with the people that they care about, but establish healthy boundaries. And it's that, I mean, I cannot emphasize how important that is.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. Again, I'm going to encourage people to take a look in the chat. There's links there to donate to Feet Forward. And that notion of a lived experience, I think a lot of Elizabeth poetry speaks to the experiences of others. And while we can't all, we can all, but we don't all experience the same things. Literature is a way of reaching into the places that our life experience doesn't. So with that, let's transition and keep your questions, because I'm sure Jen loves questions, and as Elizabeth does too. And at the end, we'll have time for both. But Elizabeth, would you be willing to read some of your work for us?
Yeah, and I'm going to read some poetry and some prose. And for those who know my work, this is really more narrative. During the time, for about 6 years, I was working with people who are living outside in Boulder, and I started to take notes. So as much as possible, I tried to not adopt a persona, but really represent, sometimes verbatim, things that people said to me. So I would just read from some of this work. He says, "You know the problem with being homeless?" And the man he's looking at shrugs. It's that it's just
Hello?
not exclusive enough.
Yes,
Anyone can join us anytime.
just a minute, I have to move away from a program.
And mute that, but yeah, thank you. This is a kind of more dialogic poem in a couple pieces. His mother says, "Would it help if I gave you some family history? My father was schizophrenic. He spent the last quarter of his life in a VA hospital. They gave him a lobotomy. There are others in my family. And my son was a beautiful child, brilliant. He was the captain of the debate team, so brilliant. He wanted to become a lawyer and work in public policy, to do work for the environment. Such a good child, so smart, so brilliant. His first semester of college, he took challenging classes, advanced math, advanced science. He got a 3.65 GPA, but during the break, he fell apart. He got expelled from college after he threatened his roommate with a knife with a serrated edge up to his throat. He smokes pot. He genuinely thinks marijuana is God. We tried. We made contracts with him, contracts he could never keep. Each time it takes longer. He's killed brain cells. He stayed at my house once for a little while, but because he causes damage, because I have younger children, I really couldn't have him stay when I wasn't there. We talked, and it was a good day together. So he agreed, and I got ready to go, and I put my hand on his shoulder. Then he hurt me. I'm recovering, but the injuries will never, they are still there." This is the second part. "When I brought him the housing paperwork in jail, I was trying to tell him that I had talked to his parents and that they were willing to help, to send his birth certificate. He was giggling. He was psychotic. I said, I have 2 things to tell you. One is that your parents will help out. The other is that even if you have to go to the hospital, you are still on the list for housing." He kept laughing, saying things I couldn't understand, but between phrases he'd say carefully, "You are trying to tell me 2 things." Gibberish, gibberish. One is that my parents will send the documents. Laughter, gibberish. The other is that I am still high priority for a housing placement. The guard stood nearby the entire time and then just took him away. It's the third part. She says, "He was hearing you through all the interference. He's still there." I tell her he didn't want to sign the release, that he refused medication, so I asked him, "What do you want? What's your ideal?" He said, "I want to go back to school. I want to finish college." I'm gonna cry myself. She begins to cry. He's still there. Intake. "What causes contributed to your being homeless?" "Wife died. Bad grief." "What causes contributed to your being homeless?" "I have the gift of tongues." "What causes contributed to your being homeless?" "I chose for the wilderness long ago." And this is a short piece of prose from a series I call Everyday Unkindness, because really what I found in trying to help connect people on the street with services is that they're treated with such unkindness and such bureaucracy. 3 newly elected city council members make a visit to the municipal court. The judge wants me to attend the meeting, but warns me that she will cut me off if I say anything controversial. These council members are friendly and still have the sheen of idealism on them. They are curious about my job working with high utilizers at this court, chronically homeless people who accrue endless tickets and cost the city a lot of money as they move through court, jail, detox, and hospital. Do you have any suggestions? They ask me. The judge gives me a warning look. Trauma is central here. Traumatized people just don't want to haul themselves to the far north of town to stay at the shelter. Maybe they can't get there. But these traumatized people are the most expensive people for the city. If we tell them they can't get services unless they go to the shelter, they won't care. They don't get services anyway. So what would be a better option? You have dramatically cut the days that an emergency warming center is available, but people will go to those if it gets cold enough. That is a good way to make contact with people who truly live outside the system. And it is also a good way to prevent people from dying of exposure. I think it is the humane and practical thing to increase the availability of emergency warming centers. The council members take notes. At the next council meeting, they vote for a change in cold weather policies and expand the conditions and times of year when the warming center is available. It is a rare victory for me and the people I serve. A week later, I'm in the parking lot when the city employee who describes herself as working in homelessness stops me. The expansion of emergency services has cut into her budget and she is angry. The thing is, Elizabeth, you work with such a tiny slice of the homeless population. You really don't know what homelessness is like. Here's what I've learned, she told me. How to park in neighborhoods where no one will notice my car. How lonely I am. How at the mercy of weather. How little I need. How hard it is to keep track of what little I need. How I never thought this could happen to me. Never thought so. I just got a little sick and then how to stay looking clean. Do I look clean? So no one will notice me. Here's what I tried to sell to make a little money, but no one wanted it or would buy it. Would you take it and give it away if there's anyone who might want or need any part at all? Intake. Do you have problems with alcohol or substance abuse? Decline to state. Have you ever received treatment for alcohol or substance abuse? Decline to state. Have you ever been told that you have problems with alcohol or substance abuse? Decline to state. Have you used alcohol or drugs 5 or more times a week in the past month? Decline to state. He says, I've heard of people doing that, but I've never got drunk off of hand sanitizer. I'd be concerned about all the additives. But yes, I have gone the extract route, not vanilla extract. I used lemon extract because it's got a higher proportion of alcohol. You get ripped really fast, but the taste doesn't leave your mouth for days. It makes you aware that alcohol is really a poison that the human body has just barely developed the ability to digest. That there are some things that we really shouldn't be eating, like gummy bears and alcohol. I think I should maybe I want to read a couple more things, but I will pare it down. I'm changing my mind based on how much time we have.
You can go over. If people can stay for questions, that's great. If you have to leave at 5, that's wonderful, but take the time you need, Elizabeth.
This is part of my everyday unkindness. Joe is in the hospital after complications with his chemotherapy. He calls me to say that he has to get to the shelter. Why? Are they going to throw out the stuff from your locker because you haven't been there for a while? No, I think that's safe right now, but I had an interview for getting a bed in the summer program, and they are saying that I need to be there by 10 a.m. Don't they know you're in the hospital? Yes, but they said that it's my responsibility to fulfill my commitments, and if I don't make the appointment, that they will go ahead with someone on the wait list. Have you talked to your doctor about this? Of course I have. But he says that if I leave the hospital, they say I discharge myself against medical advice and that I can't come back. Since this is patently absurd, I call the shelter to advocate for Joe. You know he's really sick and his doctor doesn't want him to leave the hospital, don't you? The case manager tells me that the decision is Joe's to make. We permit each individual to take responsibility for his or her own life. He can make his own priorities and he knows the rules here. If he does not come to the interview, his time slot will be given to another applicant. If at some point he is ready to follow through on an appointment, he can see if any beds are available and apply again. I think I'll read 2 more things, and one is a slightly longer prose piece, and the other is a sort of a poem. The court says that I have to go see Thor while he is in jail. He was way too psychotic during jail court for the judge to do anything with him, so he couldn't be arraigned, and he's just sitting there in special management in the jail. Thor gets a lot of tickets and therefore costs the city a lot of money. During each attempt at getting him through the arraignment, Thor cried and swore and screamed. How come the court was coming after him? It was the clerk at Walmart who used a cattle prod on his testicles in order to turn him into a woman. She should be charged, not Thor. So I am at the jail to try to do the housing questionnaire with Thor. First, a deputy takes me from the reception area to a visiting room in the special management area. These rooms have windows so that the deputies in the unit's monitoring booth look in and can see if there's any disturbance. Mostly, though, the deputies are facing the other direction into the cell block. The visiting room also has a doorbell-like contraption so that if there's a problem or you want to end your meeting, the jail staff can come and get you. You ring it, because that's the thing about special management. You are locked in the visiting room and you can't get out unless a deputy retrieves you. Yes, I am nervous. Thor arrives in the orange and white striped uniform of all special management inmates. He has leg and wrist shackles on. Lest this should seem to offer some reassurance, I would admonish otherwise. In the words of my favorite probation officer, crazy beats big. And those who have worked with this population know that all bets are off when an agitated psychotic person is in the room. Thor is at least a foot taller than me, and he is powerfully built. When he comes into the visiting room, I can see that he is terrified, and that terrifies me. I begin by trying to remind Thor that I've known him actually for about 5 years. Remember Bridge House? Remember when I worked there? He squints, trying to remember, but nods yes, uncertainly. Remember when you had that purple mohawk? Remember when you had the little BMX bike? This actually elicits a smile. He recognizes the details, not me. Slowly, we embark on the questionnaire. I ask Thor if he has a nickname. He responds matter-of-factly, Satan. Then thinks for a second and adds, devil incarnate. When I ask him if he has been in jail at any time in the last 6 months, Thor says, no. I check yes in the box. Toward the end of the questionnaire, I'm supposed to ask if Thor has mental illness, abuses substance, or has a history of head injuries. He begins to become agitated. The clerk at Walgreens resurfaces repeatedly in his responses: cattle prods, testicles. I tell Thor that he's done a great job and we are all done. Thank you so much. Thor is moaning, rocking, holding his head, talking in an unknown language. I get up slowly and quietly explain that I am going to ring the bell so that the deputy can come back and get him. Maybe he would like to rest in his cell now? I ring the bell. I can see the backs of the heads of the deputies in the booth. They seem to be laughing. Thank you so much for your patience, I say to Thor. 5 minutes pass. Thor is talking to someone, but not me. He is very unhappy with that someone. I remain standing by the window and the doorbell, ringing it at probably 45-second intervals. I explain everything I do to Thor with exaggerated calm. I remind myself to take slow, deep breaths. I suggest to Thor that we both should take slow, deep breaths. The deputies are still chatting in their booth. They never turn around so I can make eye contact. 15 minutes have passed. A deputy exits the booth to go into the unit, and I rap on the window to get his attention. He turns around and holds up a single finger. I'm busy. Wait a minute. Now Thor is pacing back and forth across the far end of the room. To my dying day, I will credit him with his care in staying as far as possible from me. I feel he is terrified of me and protecting me at the same time. Now I am afraid to rap on the glass. It might be too abrupt for Thor, who occasionally whacks his wrist irons on the table. Finally, after what I'm guessing is 20 minutes of waiting, a deputy swings casually out of the booth with his keyring. Thor is alternately raging and weeping, but he is only too glad to leave for the relative safety of his cell. I wait as obliged in the hallway until a runner can take me back to the reception area. When the deputy emerges from special management, I say indignantly, "That guy is totally psychotic." "Oh yeah, he's bananas." "I was ringing the bell for over 15 minutes. Why didn't you come and get me out of there?" "Oh, that was you? We thought it was this lawyer who was meeting with another inmate, and he's such a pain in the ass that we like to keep him waiting." He laughs and then goes back into the booth where he and his coworker lean back in their chairs and watch the special management unit through big windows as though they are watching TV. I'll read one other thing that is a question on the housing questionnaire, which is called the Vulnerability Index, which measures individuals' vulnerability in order to establish their eligibility for housing. And one of the questions is, do you have daily activities that bring pleasure and meaning to your life? If you say yes, you are graded down a point for your eligibility, because that means you have greater resilience and you are not as vulnerable. Do you have daily activities that bring pleasure and meaning to your life? Here's a picture of my son. He lives with his grandma. Isn't he good looking? The Lord has blessed me. I go to the library and check out sheet music and learn to play it on my guitar. Frisbee with my friends. Sometimes I go to the Carnegie Library and read up on local history. I knit this little blanket for you. I write poems, I compose songs, I draw, I paint, I can whirl a mean hula hoop. I had this job for a while, mopping the bakery floor at night when everyone else was gone, and it was so peaceful. It helped me keep off dope. My sister is my best friend, my ex-wife, my husband, my dog. I like to be useful. I try to pause every day with a cup of hot coffee, and that can be a challenge if you're homeless. I envision myself flipping a burger in a skillet, and that soothes me. So thank you. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for the vulnerability of that work as well. Not only your own, but the people that you give voice to.
Like people that I loved
People
and
that you
love
love.
still.
Yeah. I guess this question is for both of you then. What do you do with the anger that arises out of your desire to show compassion? What do you do? I'm not wording now, but what do you do with that anger? Because maybe Jen has.
I mean, I think I can answer. What do I do with that anger as a person that was previously homeless, living in a community in a city that is very much like the odds are completely stacked against me. That just motivates me. You know, in 2000 and I want to say 2017, I had a friend that froze to death in the city of
Christmas
Boulder.
Eve. Yeah.
What year was that?
It was a
2017?
Christmas Eve.
Yes. But it was 2017. Am I wrong?
No, that's right.
Okay. I remember that because Elizabeth was working for the court and she referred me to this program that I went to. And I went there and my foot was ready to fall off. And I had been in contact with my friend, and he was more than a friend because I had already talked about like these family type of relationships that you can build because outside, I mean, because you are literally every day, whether it's inclement weather or whether it's just any ordinary day, you are experiencing things that you are not like in your lives that you're not going to experience. And so I had a friend that froze to death, and I don't talk about that much, but these types of things, they propel me to keep moving and give back, so I can try to do whatever I can to not have somebody else freeze to death. So I guess that's my answer.
Thank you.
I would say that I came to see our system of social services so utterly corrupt and self-serving that it gave me profound pleasure to cheat the system. I would just be so angry at the way that people got treated that I would, well, I can elaborate about that some other time, but people are, the man who had cancer, who got treated that way by the shelter, when I tried to plead with the shelter to get him housed quickly because he was so ill with cancer, I got the response, why? This is literally the response. Why should we waste a housing asset on someone who is going to die anyway? And so I started, when I got that kind of response, I would start petitioning the regional housing thing, the regional housing institution, to go over the head of the people. When you ask somebody on the questionnaire, have you been in jail for the last 6 months? And if they are sitting in jail and they say no, you are supposed to say no on the questionnaire. I would tell the truth. So I think that's what I see with Jen too, is this kind of like refusal to accept the terms that are given because they are corrupt and they are inhumane. And so you have to find a new way to create a new system.
Jen.
And yeah, I would just like to say that for all the people that are outside, no matter where they are, if they happen to be in Boulder or California or New York or another country, they belong to somebody. Okay. And I cannot describe the number of emails I've received in the past year from people that people outside belong to. And it is like very, I didn't know that by doing this, that I was going to be like answering these types of questions, because I'm not a therapist. I'm not a clinician. I don't want to be. And I think they're just looking for somebody to like vent to. It's very frustrating. It's very emotional. And so I want to reiterate that, like, you know, as much as like society as a whole likes to write people outside off, they belong to somebody. And sometimes those people have family that are struggling to try to understand what is going on. In the last year, I've had over a dozen different family members message me. And it's a perplexing situation. They don't know what to do. And I can never say like for sure if I know the person or not, but I always say I can't guarantee anything, because sometimes people prefer to be outside and for whatever reason, and you know, there's no outcomes that are guaranteed. So I think that's really important, because I think I don't know how it is in California. I know how it is in Boulder. And this is a pretty unfriendly space for people experiencing homelessness. And I thank God for Elizabeth Robinson. I'm going to get emotional right now, because you know, I was relatively service resistant, and that's what they would call me. And I was in a toxic straight relationship. And, you know, I was outside for like almost 5 years, and she got this position, and I remember when she came to see me in jail, just like I don't know if you all saw the thing that she put out about this, like me and how we knew each other, but she came to the jail, and she wanted me to work with her. And I was pretty suspect about her. And I mean, she helped me to change my life. And so, I mean, there's not enough gratitude I could say for that, because there's not enough people that.
But you are one of those people now. That's the
Yes,
most amazing
yes,
thing.
I absolutely am. And I hope that I can live up to Elizabeth Robinson standards, because I can't express just her, I don't even know what to say.
She saved your life, right?
She didn't save my life, because I had to save my own life. That's a mistake everybody makes, is that you
Good
have
point.
to, a person has to recognize that they've had enough. They want to personally change. They have to be able to make changes.
Good.
Another
Thank you.
person can never do that for anyone else. What she did was she had a connection with me, and she didn't give up on me. She was there for me. You know, whether I was in jail, I was dealing with like this really toxic relationship on the street, abusive, if you will. And she was always there for me. She showed up when I needed her. And so that built my trust with her. And that is so important. And I can't describe it. And there's not enough of that in the system And as a person that understands the system today, because I attend school, now I have a nonprofit, now I'm in this game, because this is really a game. I
Yeah.
understand. It really is. This is a bureaucratic game.
Mm.
I understand how it like excludes people, and it relies on self-reporting, which is never accurate. And like people are just being missed left and right. And I have family members writing into me. I'm getting it from all sides. And so I have a wide variety of like a perspective to bring to the table. And I'm just saying to myself, wow, I don't even know how I got out of being homeless. I mean, that's why I'm saying I'm a like statistical unicorn. And I can only have gratitude for Elizabeth, because she knows my street boyfriend. She's written about him. She didn't talk about him tonight. You know, and she knows people I've lost, and we have this. I mean, I don't know. I don't really have anything else to say, I guess, about it, because she knows all the people I've lost and how hard it is, and how I'm just trying to like save people from dying, and trying to help them navigate a system that is very set up against them.
Would you like to read out what you just wrote? Or would you, I can too, if you prefer.
I think
Yeah.
you're muted, Bev.
Yeah, I'll read it. Bev says, Jennifer, your presence is beautiful. You are living and serving as a wounded healer. You have no idea how the impact you are having here today. And I imagine that is true for your every day in Boulder and beyond. You matter so much and are making a difference. And Bev says, I thank you, but we thank you. We thank you. And for the next person that you make this possible for, we thank you.
And I think it's really, you know, I could be there and build a relationship with you and love you, but I was also going home every night and sleeping in a bed and cooking at a stove, and you were not. And I will say about Jennifer that she knows everybody. If I was looking for someone, she knew how to find them. She always knew, and even in a terrible, terrible situation, and don't underestimate how brutal winters are in Boulder, she got frostbite. She was helping me find people. She was telling me where people were hanging. She was telling me who was in a relationship with who. And that kind of knowledge is what you lack that someone like I don't have. And that's also the way Jennifer builds trust with people, which is why this is a really important nonprofit that I hope you will support, because the way out of the homelessness is partly to see that it's possible, and Jennifer shows that it's possible. She shows that it's possible to heal and also to go on from your healing and help other people. That is just a miracle, if you ask me. So,
Any other questions or comments from the audience? Mike, and then Nancy.
I'm just curious, Elizabeth, whether your position was replaced when you left as court navigator. Is there anyone serving in that capacity?
Yeah.
there's three.
Yes, I would love to answer this. Yes, they replaced her with somebody else that will never replace her. Does
Nancy.
does that answer your question?
Well, I think, from what you've been saying today, that Elizabeth has had, a very significant impact on your life, and probably several others. But so I'm just curious about whether that position can continue to be effective to reach out to others and have a similar impact. I don't. is it a good approach, or is it too limited? Is the navigator going to get burned out and frustrated and find it just too difficult to game the system to help clients? I guess I'm looking for solutions here.
You might also be asking, what can we do? With those of us who are not
Sure.
navigators. Elizabeth, you had something. I didn't mean to cut you off.
Well, I think it's just important to know that the systems that are supposed to be helping people typically are incredibly high barrier and punitive, really punitive. So somebody who really wants to move out of homelessness is often thwarted in 1,000 small and large ways. And if you work in this situation, and I mean, like, Jen has come from trauma and she's willing herself to go back into the thick of the trauma. So yeah, if you work in that situation every day and you see people you love die, which happens a lot, it's painful and depleting. But I will also say that I met all the heroes. Like, I love every single doctor at People's Clinic. Oh my God. And the greeter at the door, and Riley, who is at Harvest of Hope. You find the best people. And also the people on the street they were my friends and my family, and I love them. And that's the hardest thing about not being in Boulder anymore.
And if I could just piggyback to that, I want to say, like, the most incredible thing that has happened for me is I started this nonprofit, like I said, because there was no space for me. I created a space for myself and others. And my previous service providers, like, I wouldn't even, I guess I'm considering the municipal court a service provider because that's how it is in Boulder. Today, they are my partners, okay? And I mean, isn't that mind-blowing? I mean, that is mind-blowing. And so I host the other people, the court navigators that followed Elizabeth, which, that's a personal opinion on if I think they're as effective or not. But I host them every week at my events. I host their community court, and I only endorse that because they are moving further away from punitive approaches, and they are working more towards restorative justice and also housing focused types of exchanges, let's say, instead of like jail time. So I host them twice a month. And I mean, it is like something to see because it's actually incredible, right? I mean, it's really incredible because I was a part of the system when they were trying to like give me all this jail time for being homeless. Elizabeth can speak to this. She knows. They were literally trying. There was at one point they were trying to give me 2 years for being homeless. I had no really any significant charges. It was just, and now they are my partners. I'm hosting them at my events, and it's almost kind of sort of surreal. But I think the thing about helping roles, which I think is universal, is that I think that some people get into helping. There's definitely a stark contrast between people that are driven to do this work and have a certain connection to that. They go the extra mile. And then there are other people that just need a job. And the results speak for themselves. And so, when I think about Elizabeth Robinson and I think about her time in municipal court, she was the first court navigator, so it was the first position. She was working for a person that is notorious for being difficult. And I'm being kind with that, okay? And she put people first. And anyway, I guess that's all I have to say, but I just wanted to say that I do work with the other court navigators today, and they're absolutely in no way, shape, or form Elizabeth.
But I would just say, like I found the mental health system the worst and the most punitive aspect of this, followed closely, well, I don't know, the shelter and health and human services. They're kind of almost equal in terms of inhumanity. I actually really liked a lot of the people at the jail. They knew the people in the jail and would tell me this person's having a hard day, or and the city prosecutor, who was the person initially trying to hold Jen in jail, now he serves breakfast at the Thursday Deacon's Closet breakfast, and he really wants to abolish imprisonment for people who have homeless related crimes. So there are shifts in the system, and I think it's really possible for people of goodwill to make them shift. But there's nothing really to replace what Jen is doing, which is the outreach and finding people where they are and building trust with them and helping them get services and help on their own terms. Because a lot of times mental health services, health and human services tell you what you need and how to get it. And that might not be how you want to operate or what you want. And so outreach is crucial.
And I just want to say that my organization just finished its first fiscal year, and I'm extremely proud of what I've built, and the community support that I've had. And I just want to tell everybody that I helped house 13 people last year, and 13 people that would have ordinarily been missed and or unlocatable and or not wanting to talk to particular services because people develop like a resistance against. We don't have a lot of services here, okay? So like there's only one shelter. So if they don't like the shelter, they don't want to deal with the shelter, and so I think that's really short of amazing. Okay. And then on top of that, I've helped over 24 people get into the housing process, because this is a timely process. This is not fast. You understand in California that, you already have a population issue, and then you have a homelessness issue, and a lack of affordable housing is pretty much across the nation. So with that said, I'm speaking to you to say that the housing process is timely. So I've had the privilege of helping over 24 people start their housing process. I mean, that gives me there's nothing better than that. I can't convey that because I've had my people freeze to death out here.
Yeah.
I've had, I can't even describe how many losses I've had out here. I can't even count. I've lost count. And so, yes, I feel really good about that because I feel,
Those are people who would not be going to the shelter or connecting with services in other ways.
oh no, they would have been totally missed, the way the bureaucracy is set up and the way the structure is set up. They would have they would have not been known. And I would like to share a story with this group. I know we're running over, but I just really want to share the story. Elizabeth doesn't even know about the story. This is phenomenal. Okay. So I befriended this person okay, in Boulder, who was housed. And he kept talking to me about how he was going to be a reporter for this nonprofit new paper coming to Boulder. And I'm like, okay, whatever, right? And it's last winter. He messages me and he says, Jennifer, I need your help. And I said, okay, what's going on? He said, well, I kind of sort of know this guy who's homeless and he's along the creek. And I'm pretty sure he has frostbite and he was sleeping outside without a blanket because he's scared to cover himself with a blanket. And so we got him inside and we paid for a hotel.
So just an interruption to say, if you are covered with a blanket, you are considered to be camping and you can get a camping ticket. Sorry to.
Okay. No, that's fine. So I'm like, okay, I'm like, anyway, so he's talking to me, and as I'm learning more about the situation, this is a person that has lived off the grid for 26 years in my community. Okay. I mean, this person is a case study. Okay. He has frostbite. And so what ended up happening is that I connected to him when he was in the hotel room, and I talked to him on the phone, and he was scared to go to the hospital because he thought he had warrants for covering himself with a blanket, and he also thought that he didn't have the money to pay for a hospital visit, so that he thought he was going to be like the FBI was essentially going to show up. That's where his mind was at. And so I talked to him on the phone and I was like, listen, through all that, I said whatever I said, and I set up realistic expectations, and I got him to go to the hospital. So he ended up having surgery and they cut off 5 of his fingertips. That's how bad he had frostbite. This man is 72 years old, been outside in Boulder for 26 years. I mean, I was just like astounded. I mean, these things happen that like take your breath away. It took my breath away. So obviously I want help. So I went to see him in the hospital the very next day. I mean, after I talked to him on the phone, and he didn't know me from anybody. And I went in there and just talked to him as a human being, and shared my lived experience. And I was like, what have you been doing? Like, I was like mesmerized with the fact this person has been in Boulder somewhere in some public space for 26 years, and like nobody even knew about him. Like, how do we not know about you? You're 72 years old. Like, you matter. And he told me, he said, well, I've been camping in this space for like 25 years. And then it got exposed for a crime that I had nothing to do with. And so I was camping in Chautauqua, and I was there for about 6 months. And then the camp rangers came and they gave me a warning. So that's what set him off about this whole criminalization stuff. So I was like, okay, well, like, listen, don't worry about the police. That's what I was just trying, whatever I had to do, and so I'm just thinking about this right now, and I don't have this pre-scripted. So, I mean, it was like this very situational thing, and I had his trust, and so I was like asking him, like, what have you been doing for 26 years? Like, how have you been surviving? Because he didn't know, but I had been already emailing my networks, my contacts, to see how we can help him. And it was just mesmerizing. And so he says to me, he says, well, I've been living off the grid and I don't go to food banks. I go through dumpsters and I also raid the free libraries. Do y'all have those in California, the free library, little libraries?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So he's like, well, I've been raiding the free libraries. So I'm sitting in the hospital and it was just like, whoa, like this is stuff you read about. And so I said, okay, so what do you want to do? And he said, well, I'm ready to be housed. And I said, is that right? Are you ready to be housed? And he said, yes, I'm ready to be housed. And I said, all right. So then I reached out to all my people, okay, that I have connections to in this very like screwed up system. And said, I have this guy. And he agreed to go to the shelter. And he stayed at the shelter. And then behind the scenes, I was working on ways to keep him busy because the shelter's not like really a kind place to stay. And I mean, he was also 72 years old. So that was like kind of a disadvantage to him because the average person that stays in the shelter is probably about 34. And so I was just keep like monitoring him. And it was like probably one of my best days. So I was doing my outreach event, and this was probably about 5 months ago. And I'm running around because I'm like, there's so many moving parts at my event. I'm like hosting all these providers and doing all these things. And this guy shows up in Patagonia, like he had like Patagonia hat, jacket. I mean, looked incredible. And he was like, Jennifer. And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, who are you? And he's like, Edmund. And I was like, Edmund? And he's like, yeah, I got housed. I came by, I wanted to stop by and tell you thank you. And I lost it. I mean, and so this is just an example of like the type of thing that happens with like bureaucracy because it's so black and white, and it doesn't apply to everybody. I mean, and so that's one of the things where like I fit in because I understand where those parameters are, and I don't feel like anybody is worth losing. I feel like everybody deserves to be found. Yeah, I mean, that was awesome.
That's awesome. That whole thing.
I mean, I have a picture of that day because I mean, I was like floored. I did not know that he was going to show up. I mean, here's this homeless guy that's been roaming around Boulder for 26 years. Elizabeth doesn't even know him.
I don't think
And
so.
yeah, I know, it was awesome.
Well,
Great
thank
story.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. And Elizabeth, do you want to shout out for the next reading? First of all, just to digest all of this, and again, I know I keep on posting it. I'm being more annoying than usual, but help the people who are helping people. Please, if you have any chance, not even now, but later, donate to Feet Forward. And let's also help the people next door, the people outside our doors, there's people in Oakland, people in San Francisco. Like Jen said, you don't have to look far to find people who are unhoused, human beings struggling with these things. Thank you for your time. Elizabeth, would you like to get a shout out for the next reading? And I'll go ahead and post the program because it has a link to that as well.
So in around a month, we will be having Kaya Oaks, who Mary can talk about, but I'm extremely excited that we will be featuring An Uncertain Age, poems by bold women of a certain age. And some of the editors, publishers, Jenny Hoyle, Kristen Morgan, and I think Connie left, we're here today, and Diane Alters, who has poems in there. So it's a remarkable anthology. It's all poetry that's magnificent by women who are over 65. And
That's awesome. I want to move to California.
Come on, Jen, we'll
they're
love to
all-
I
have
do.
you.
I really want like this sense of community that I'm gaining from this like Zoom. I do. I want to move there because this is beautiful. You know, this is not anything that I'm used to in Boulder at all. And so I just
all those poets I just mentioned are in Denver. So, it's not too far away.
And just a shout out to Kaya Oaks. Kaya has written a book called The Defiant Middle, How Women Claim Life's In-Betweens and Remake the World. And it is a passionate, some say angry, I'm going to say passionate book about the women who've been written out of spiritual texts and history over time. And it's quite a read, and it's quite a combination with the Ink sisters and Kaya Oaks. So that's going to be fun.
Thank
So
you.
let's give a virtual or otherwise round of applause. Thank you all for staying. So many people have stuck around, and we
This was
appreciate
awesome.
your presence.
Thank
We
you,
admire
Jennifer,
it.
Elizabeth.
thank you.
Thank you for coming. Thank you, Jen.
Thank you everyone for coming.
That's an awesome year she had. Wow.
Thank you. You can come to California and then they can copy, Boulder can copy in 10 years. We'd love to have you.
Maybe one of these days we'll get her out here.
Yeah, doing so much there.
Yeah.
Oh, there might be a ways that people copy what she's done. It's groundbreaking.
Yeah,
a lot.
right. And then,
Done.
yeah, right. This is a good place to start. Anyway,